Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that might seem a little bit dry at first glance, the 3M 2023 annual report.
Oh, yeah.
But stick with us, because I promise you there's a lot more to this than just numbers and charts. One of the first things that jumped out at me was actually their new vision statement. Have you seen this?
I have, yeah. 3M science applied to life making what's indispensable.
It's bolder than their previous one, right?
Yeah, it is for sure. It's definitely making a statement.
Yeah, and they're not shying away from, big claims either.
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking about helping their customers avoid almost 14 million metric tons of CO2 emissions last year.
That's a lot.
That's a huge number. And it got me thinking, are they really walking the walk when it comes to sustainability?
It's a good question.
So to help us unpack all of this and really dig into the details, we have our financial expert here.
Yeah.
Now, you always manage to find the story behind the numbers. So I'm really curious, what were your first impressions when you first cracked open this report?
Well, it's interesting to see how 3M is trying to balance all these different factors right now. I mean, they're facing some headwinds for sure, like legal issues and supply chain disruption.
Yeah, those are big ones.
But, they're also highlighting their strengths like strong cash flow and their commitment to innovation. So the big question is, are they making the right moves to navigate this complex landscape and truly make themselves indispensable? Live up to that new vision statement.
Right, exactly. So let's start with the big picture here. Their overall performance in 2023. What's the story there?
Well, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, I'd say. On the one hand, their sales have declined slightly over the past 3 years, which, could be a cause for concern.
Then that's not usually a good sign.
Not typically.
Yeah.
But they're still generating strong cash flow, and they've consistently increased their dividend payout to shareholders every single year.
Hold on, back up for a second. Dividends.
Yeah.
Okay, I know those are important, but can you explain that to me? Why can a consistent dividend payout be seen as both a good and a potentially bad thing?
Yeah, that's a really great question.
It seems counterintuitive.
It does. So a consistent dividend can signal stability and financial strength to investors, right? It shows that the company is generating enough cash to reward its shareholders, even when times are tough.
Okay, makes sense.
But on the flip side, some analysts argue that a really high dividend payout could indicate that the company isn't reinvesting enough back into the business for future growth. So it's a little bit like, choosing to spend your money today versus saving it for tomorrow.
I see. So it's all about finding that balance, right?
Exactly. Finding that sweet spot.
Okay, so let's talk about this sales decline a little bit more.
Yeah.
Is it just a temporary blip, or should we be reading more into it?
Yeah.
What are some of the factors at play here?
Well, the report points to a few things. They mention slow growth in certain markets, which, a lot of companies are facing right now.
Yeah, it's a tough economic environment for sure.
Yeah, and then there are those ongoing supply chain issues that have been plaguing businesses globally.
Right.
And of course, we can't forget about the impact of those legal challenges they're dealing with.
Yeah, those are definitely looming large. We'll dive into the legal battles a little bit later, but first I want to circle back to this idea of 3M making itself indispensable. They're clearly going through some major changes, including a pretty significant restructuring. How does that fit into their larger strategy?
So that restructuring is a major part of their effort to streamline the organization and reduce costs. They're consolidating business units, cutting back on bureaucracy, and trying to become more agile overall.
Okay, so becoming leaner and meaner.
Exactly. And the report says they've already achieved over $400 million in savings through these efforts.
Wow, that's a lot of money. So they're freeing up resources, but where's all that money going?
Well, a good chunk of it is being directed towards what they call emerging growth opportunities. They're investing heavily in areas like climate technology and industrial automation, which they see as key drivers of future growth.
So it sounds like they're trying to position themselves at the forefront of these emerging trends. Can you give me some specific examples of what these investments actually look like in practice?
Sure. One example is their development of multi-layer films for energy-efficient buildings. These films actually help regulate the temperature inside buildings, reducing the need for heating and cooling, and ultimately saving energy.
That's interesting.
They've also partnered with Sponte Technologies, Inc. to develop carbon capture solutions.
So they're really trying to tackle this from multiple angles.
Yeah, this technology captures CO2 emissions from industrial sources, preventing them from entering the atmosphere, which is obviously a big deal in the fight against climate change.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these investments align with their sustainability goals.
Yeah.
But, climate technology, carbon capture, These are long-term plays.
Yeah.
What about some more immediate growth areas?
One area where they're seeing significant growth right now is their automotive electrification platform.
Oh, interesting.
So they're developing various components for electric vehicles, like advanced thermal barrier materials that help improve battery safety and efficiency. As the demand for electric cars continues to skyrocket, 3M is well positioned to capitalize on this trend.
That's a smart move. It's like they're anticipating the future of transportation and making sure they have a seat at the table. But speaking of the future, I'm curious about their financial performance in this area. The report mentioned a 30% jump in 2023 for this platform,
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
and that follows another 30% increase in 2022. So that's huge growth 2 years in a row. But is it sustainable in the long run?
That's the big question, right? The growth in the electric vehicle market is undeniable, but there's also a lot of competition out there. 3M is going to need to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to innovation and cost effectiveness to maintain that level of growth.
It's a tough market to be in for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a company that's trying to reinvent itself. They're focused on innovation, sustainability, and efficiency. But we can't forget about those legal challenges that are hanging over them.
You're right. Those are definitely a big factor.
The report mentions some major legal agreements and settlements, especially regarding PFAS, those forever chemicals, and their combat arms earplugs. Can you give us the lowdown on what's going on there?
Sure. So 3M is facing a number of lawsuits related to both PFAS contamination and alleged defects in their earplugs. These legal battles are costing them billions of dollars in settlements, and there's still some uncertainty about what the ultimate financial impact will be.
So while they're making some progress in terms of sustainability, these legal issues are definitely casting a shadow over everything.
Yeah. It's a complicated situation. They're trying to move forward while also addressing the consequences of their past actions.
Okay, so we've got a company that's trying to walk a tightrope here. They're pushing for innovation and sustainability, but they're also dealing with the fallout of these legal challenges. It seems like there's a lot more to unpack here. So let's dive into some of those less obvious but equally important details in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm ready when you are. One thing that really struck me about this report is how it reveals not just their financial health, but also their values and priorities.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. So what's something that caught your eye that might not be obvious to someone just skimming through it? What's hidden in plain sight, so to speak?
Well, one thing that stood out to me was the amount of detail they provide about their research and development efforts. I mean, they're investing billions of dollars into R&D.
Yeah, I remember seeing that figure, almost $2 billion last year.
Yeah.
That's a huge chunk of their budget.
Right. It really signals a strong commitment to innovation and future growth.
But what exactly are they focusing all that money on? The report mentions things like advanced materials and digital platforms. Can you break that down a little bit for me?
Sure. So they're exploring a wide range of areas, but some key themes definitely emerge. They're really pushing the boundaries in material science, developing things like advanced adhesives, films, and coatings that have applications in everything from electronics to healthcare to automotive.
Wow, so they're really trying to cover all their bases.
Yeah, and they're also investing heavily in digital technologies, creating software platforms and data analytics tools that can help their customers improve efficiency and make better decisions.
It sounds like they're trying to stay ahead of the curve in a world that's becoming increasingly digital. But they're also realistic about the challenges they're facing, right? I'm thinking about that section on risk factors.
Oh, absolutely. They dedicate a significant portion of the report to outlining the various risks they face, both internal and external. And it's not just lip service. They actually delve into specific strategies they're using to try and mitigate these risks.
Okay, so what are some of the biggest threats that they're worried about?
Well, obviously, the ongoing legal issues are a major concern. Those lawsuits could have a significant impact on their bottom line for years to come, but they also highlight other risks like cybersecurity threats, supply chain disruptions, even the potential impact of climate change on their operations.
It's a lot to juggle.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot to think about. But it's good that they're not ignoring these potential problems. They're actively trying to address them.
Yeah, it seems like they're taking a more proactive approach rather than just reacting to things as they come up.
Exactly, and that's a good sign. It shows that they're thinking long-term and trying to build resilience. They're not just trying to weather the storm. They're trying to prepare for whatever the future might hold.
Yeah, I have a confession to make. When I was reading the report, I kind of skimmed over the section about the management team and the board of directors. It's not exactly the most exciting part.
I get it. It can be a bit dry.
But you always say that understanding the leadership is crucial. So, enlighten me. What kind of insights can we gain from paying attention to that section.
You're right. It's often overlooked, but it can be really revealing. It's important to remember that these are the people steering the ship, making those big decisions that will shape the company's future.
So what can you tell me about 3M's leadership based on what's in the report? Anything that raises a red flag? Or conversely, anything that makes you feel more confident?
Well, one thing that stands out is that their CEO, Mike Roman, has been in the position since 2018, and he's also the chairman of the board.
Okay, so he's holding a lot of power.
Yeah, this consolidation of power. It can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can really streamline decision-making and provide a clear vision. But on the other hand, it can raise concerns about, checks and balances and potential conflicts of interest.
It's like putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And then you have Manish Pattalawala, their president and CFO. He joined 3M relatively recently after a long stint at General Electric.
Oh, interesting. So he's bringing in some outside perspective.
Yeah, and his background in finance and transformation could be a key asset as 3M continues to restructure and adapt to these changing market conditions.
Speaking of restructuring, there's one more big move mentioned in the report that I wanted to touch on, the spin-off of their healthcare business. What's the latest on that, and how does it fit into their overall strategy?
So they're on track to finalize that spin-off in 2024. The idea is to create a separate publicly traded healthcare company while 3M retains a minority stake.
Okay, so they're not completely cutting ties.
Right. It's a pretty common strategy these days. It allows both companies to focus more sharply on their respective markets, and it can potentially unlock more value for shareholders.
But it does make you wonder what this new streamlined 3M will look like without that healthcare arm. Will they be able to maintain their momentum?
Yeah.
Especially with all those legal costs looming over them. What's their outlook for 2024?
Well, they do provide a pretty detailed outlook for the coming year. They're projecting organic sales to decline in the range of 0.5% to 2.5%.
A decline in sales. That doesn't sound overly optimistic.
No, but they're also anticipating earnings per share to be between $8.50 and $9.
So how is that possible? How can they still project positive earnings if they're expecting sales to go down?
Well, they cite things like continued slow growth in certain markets and those ongoing supply chain challenges as factors that are going to impact their sales. But they're also anticipating further cost savings from all the restructuring and operational improvements they've been making, and those savings should help to bolster their earnings.
So they're trying to find ways to cut costs and improve efficiency to offset those potential losses in sales.
Exactly. It's all about adapting to the current market conditions.
But do you think they're being realistic about these projections? Are there any potential red flags or uncertainties that they might be downplaying?
Well, with any financial projection, there's always a degree of uncertainty. The global economic outlook is still pretty volatile, and unforeseen events could always impact their performance.
Yeah, that's true.
It's also worth noting that their projections assume a certain level of success in managing those legal liabilities, which, isn't guaranteed.
That's a good point. So it seems like they're walking a tightrope between optimism and realism.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've analyzed their financial performance, dug into their strategy, considered the role of leadership, talked about their risk factors. But what does it all mean for the average person listening to this? Why should they care?
That's a great question. Ultimately, the performance of companies like 3M has a ripple effect throughout the economy.
Oh, absolutely.
Their success or failure can impact jobs, investments, even the products and technologies that we use in our everyday lives.
So in a way, understanding these annual reports helps us to understand the forces that shape our world.
Exactly. It's about connecting the dots, seeing how these large corporations are responding to global trends and challenges, and how those responses in turn impact our lives.
That's a powerful insight. It's easy to get lost in all the numbers and the jargon, but you've really helped us to see the human side of this story.
Well, and speaking of the human side, there's one more aspect of the report that I think is worth highlighting. Their focus on their workforce.
Oh, right. They do dedicate a whole section to talking about their employees and their commitment to diversity and inclusion.
And it's not just empty words. They highlight their efforts to create a more inclusive workplace culture, provide opportunities for professional development support, employee well-being.
So they're really putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, they seem to understand that a diverse and engaged workforce is crucial for innovation and long-term success.
And that's something investors should pay attention to as well, right?
Absolutely. A company that invests in its people is often a company that's investing in its future.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here. We've explored their financial performance, their strategic priorities, leadership risk factors, their commitment to their employees. But I still feel like there's one piece of the puzzle missing.
You're talking about the question of whether they're actually living up to their new vision statement, aren't you?
You read my mind. That whole idea of making what's indispensable, based on everything we've discussed. Do you think they're on the right track?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's not an easy one to answer. I think they're making some positive strides in terms of innovation, sustainability, and employee engagement. But they also face some significant challenges, particularly with those legal battles and the need to adapt to a rapidly changing world.
So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, I'd say so. Ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide whether they believe 3M is truly on the path to becoming indispensable.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. It's not just about understanding a company's financial performance. It's about grappling with those larger questions about values, priorities, and the role of corporations in society.
Exactly. It's about looking beyond the numbers and seeing the bigger picture.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the 3M 2023 annual report, I'm struck by the sheer complexity of everything we've uncovered.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating case study. I mean, you have this company with a long history of innovation, right?
Well, I'd like to see.
But they're also grappling with some very real and very serious challenges, And at the same time, they're trying to position themselves for the future in a world that's constantly changing.
Yeah, it's like they're at a crossroads, trying to reconcile their past with their aspirations for the future.
That's a great way to put it. It's like they're dealing with the consequences of some of their past actions,
Like the environmental and product liability issues we talked about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're also pushing forward with these new technologies and strategies that are trying to address some of the world's biggest problems.
Right. And it's that duality, that tension between the past and the future that makes this story so interesting. It's not a simple good guys versus bad guys narrative.
No, not at all.
It's much more nuanced. It's a company trying to figure out how to navigate all of these ethical, environmental, and economic considerations.
Exactly. And it really makes you think about what it means for a company to be truly indispensable in this day and age.
Right. Does it all come down to profits and market share?
Or is it about something more?
Is it about making a positive impact on the world, addressing those critical challenges, and leaving a legacy that goes beyond just the bottom line?
I think those are the questions that we all need to be asking.
Yeah, not just corporate executives, but all of us.
As consumers, investors, citizens.
We all have a role to play in shaping the future that we want to see.
Absolutely. It's about being informed, engaged, and holding these companies accountable.
Yeah. Demanding transparency, pushing for solutions that benefit everyone.
People and the planet.
So as we wrap up here, what's your final takeaway from all of this? What's the one thing you really want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that these annual reports, as dry as they may seem, contain so much valuable information.
Oh, they're gold mines.
They help us to understand the companies that are shaping our world,
They're not just about numbers.
No, they give you insights into their strategies, their challenges, their values, what they're striving for.
And by taking the time to really dig in and understand this information,
we can get a much clearer picture of the forces that are shaping our future.
Well said.
Yeah.
It's all about looking beyond the numbers, seeing that bigger picture and asking those tough questions.
Exactly. And you know what? I think 3M is doing that too. They're asking those tough questions of themselves, trying to figure out how to balance their responsibilities with their ambitions. It's going to be interesting to see what this all leads them.
Yeah, their journey is far from over. So, to everyone listening out there, we hope you found this deep dive insightful and engaging.
We encourage you to check out the 3M report for yourselves. And let us know what you think.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about these companies, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions.
And to advocate for the future we want. So until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.